All right, welcome back, guys. So today we're going to do factoring trinomials, like I said in the last video. Now, when you're factoring trinomials, there's a specific form here that it states, and that form is, I can't even spell, trinomials. Now that form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So you see that the trinomial has three terms, hence the prefix tri. Ax squared is 1, bx is 2, and c is 3. Now c stands for your constant. So c is your constant term. Now what you're doing in your factoring trinomials is you're trying to find things that multiply or values that multiply to c, but also add to b. So here, let's try an example. We have x squared plus 8x plus 15. Now, this is an example of when the constant term is positive. So constant term is positive. Now, here's the goal, like I said. You know that you have two x's here. Well, how did you get those? Well, you took x and you multiplied it by x. So your goal when you're factoring a trinomial is to break it into two binomials. So now that you know you're going to break it into two binomials, you know you need two sets of parentheses. You just said that x times x gives us x squared. So each binomial gets an x. Now here's the part where I was mentioning that you need to find two numbers that multiply to c. So we need two numbers that multiply to 15, positive 15. So let's think of all the ways we can get positive 15. Well, there's 1 times 15, and then there's 3 times 5. So now you have to think to yourself, well, okay, 1 times 15 is 15, but now I need those two numbers that I picked to add to 8. Well, if you take 15 and 1 and you add them, you get 16. So it's not 8, this one will not work. Next, you say, okay, 3 and 5. Well, 3 times 5 is 15, and 3 plus 5 is 8. So that works out. So this is where you're going to put in the plus 3 because it was positive, and the plus 5 because the 5 was positive as well. Now, the way to check your work here is to see that you can now use that FOIL method to check your work. So let's try it. Let's do x plus 3 and x plus 5 and see what we come up with. So x times x gives us x squared. X times 5 gives us positive 5x. 3 times x gives us positive 3x. And 3 times 5 gives us 15. Now you see here that you can combine like terms because this 5x and this 3x here are the same in like terms. So you can add these together, and if you realize, you'll see that you'll get a final answer of x squared plus 8x plus 15. And now you'll see that it matches the top, which we originally started with. Now let's try one where the constant term is negative. So constant term is negative. All right, so here's our example. X cubed minus x squared minus 30x. Make this a better 3, better squared. Okay, well, like we learned in the first video, just by basic example of factoring, you see that each term here in the trinomial, 3 terms, they all contain an x. So to make it simpler, you can take an x out. If you take an x out, you say x to the third, and then the 1x is coming out, so 3 minus 1 gives us x squared. X squared, take away the 1x, you're left with just 1x. And then if you take the x away from the 30x, you're left with just 30. So now you're in that trinomial where you can say, I need two numbers to multiply to negative 30. Well, in order to get a negative number, that means you need one negative term and one positive. One negative, one positive. So now you're thinking to yourself, well, what are those multiples of 30 that I can multiply together to get 30? But I also need them to come up with a negative 1. So you can say 6 and 5, right? Let's do 6 times 5. Now, 6 times 5 is 30, but how do we make that a negative 30? We can make one of these terms negative. So if we do negative 5 times 6, we get that negative 30, correct? Now, but does negative 5 plus 6 give us negative 1? No, it gives us positive 1. So all you want to do is make the 6 negative and times it by positive 5, which will now allow you to break it down into your binomial. And I'm going to do it over here. You need 2 sets of parentheses because you need 2 binomials. Let me back up here and leave enough room. So remember, this x has to come down. So because you pulled it out, now you can set up 2 sets of parentheses to form 2 binomials. You know that x times x, there's 2 x's, so each binomial gets an x. And then you just said that the negative 6 and the positive 5 will multiply to negative 30 and also add to negative 1. Now, this is much simpler because of the fact that you know you have a negative number here, and if you need a negative number here. Now, if this was positive, if this b term or this bx term in the center here was positive, you would use this option up here, the positive 6 and the negative 5. So drink it in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.